on, Peter.
Oh, hi Byron, nice of you to come in.
How are you doing?
Well, it's been a pretty good day. It's very satisfying being the member for Fisher, helping people on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah. So you're the current member for the Fisher seat?
Yes, I've been privileged to be a member of the Australian Parliament as the Liberal member for Fisher since 1993, and during that time my office and I have been able to assist thousands of people in their dealings with government, and I must say that gives me personally a great deal of satisfaction. And of course we have been able to assist a lot of people. We've been able to break log jams for them. We've been able to make sure that they get their entitlements, and I must say that probably is the most satisfying part of being a local representative.
So you're standing for re-election again?
Yes, I've been privileged to be re-endorsed by the Liberal Party as its candidate in Fisher. We don't quite know when the election's going to be, but I suspect it's going to be sooner rather than later. One of the great things about our Australian democracy is that we do elect a government every 3 years, and we hope, of course, that the government will get re-elected when the poll is held this year. But one of the things about Australia being the 6th oldest democracy in the world is that we do have the right to choose our government at state, federal and local level, and of course we have a robust democracy, and we've got a lot to be thankful for. We are indeed the lucky country.
So why did you become involved in politics?
Well, I wasn't very happy with the approach taken by the Labor Party in a range of issues, and like many other Australians, I whinged and whined and complained and spoke to my friends and said that things should be done differently, things should be improved, and they said, well, why don't you go out there and do something about it yourself? And so I put my hand up as the candidate for the Liberal Party here in Fisher, and I was elected as the member for Fisher, and during that time the boundaries of the electorate have expanded and contracted, because we have had a large number of redistributions, because what's happening is people are moving from what I like to refer to as the Rust Belt areas of southern Australia to the Sunshine Coast and to the Sunshine State, and constantly with the growth in our population we're entitled to extra parliamentary representation, and that necessitates a statewide redistribution, and as a result we've had changes in the boundaries of the electorate of Fisher and other seats.
Can you tell me a bit about your vision for the Fisher electorate?
Look, the big challenge that we have as one of the fastest growing areas in Australia is making sure that we have infrastructure to meet the needs of our growing population. We've got a population here of over 250,000 people at the moment, and over the next 10 to 15 years it's expected that that population will close to double. That's why it's incumbent upon elected representatives at all levels of government to work hard to make sure that we have the road infrastructure, the rail infrastructure, the hospital infrastructure and other forms of infrastructure to make sure that we do have the capacity to handle the increased population. After all, we're privileged to live in the most wonderful part of the most wonderful state in Australia. It's no wonder that people want to come and join us, but the ongoing challenge that we have is to make sure that the infrastructure keeps up with the needs of our growing population, and I've been continuing to fight for more infrastructure. We've been very successful to date, but I intend to continue to work hard on behalf of the electorate of Fisher to make sure that this important need is never overlooked.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Australia's involvement in Iraq?
Well, I mean, you've got to look at actually what happened, and with the benefit of hindsight, one might at times make a different decision. But the Australian government was given intelligence that indicated that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. There were a number of UN Security Council resolutions which effectively authorised the use of force. Saddam Hussein was given many opportunities to prove that he did not have weapons of mass destruction, but if you cast your mind back, you'll recall how he used to expel from time to time weapons inspectors. He played little games, and really he made it pretty obvious to anyone who was looking that he probably did have weapons of mass destruction. If he didn't have weapons of mass destruction, then why didn't he simply come and say, look, come on in, look at what I've got, we've got nothing to hide, we don't have weapons of mass destruction. But instead he played the game of brinkmanship, and consequently it was necessary to take the action that was taken. Now I must say that we have had a democratic election in Iraq. A proportion of the population is not prepared to accept the result. And while we turn on our television sets and we see lots of examples of tragedies in Iraq, such as suicide bombing, we don't hear much about the fact the court system's now working, the health system is better than it ever has been, more universities and schools have opened, and the everyday lives of many Iraqis are much better than they were under Saddam Hussein. I hope that Australia will be able to remove itself from Iraq as soon as possible. However, we can't leave before the job is done, and if we and our coalition allies were to withdraw unilaterally at this stage, then there'd be absolute chaos. It could be that Iran might move in. It could be, in fact, that Iraq itself might be dismembered into 3 countries. And so the job has been started. It'll be nice when the job is finished. I'd like to see us out as soon as possible, but we can't leave before the job is done.
Do you support the men and women serving in the Australian Defence Force?
Oh, look, I have a very great admiration for the men and women of the Australian Defence Forces, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, and in fact on a couple of occasions I've gone on what they call is an Australian parliamentary defence deployment, and I've gone on to naval ships, and I've actually seen the trials and tribulations, I've seen the hardships of Australia's servicemen and women. I think we owe them a great debt, and the point I also want to make is that whether or not people support the deployments that our men and women have overseas, it's very important to recognise that these men and women are entitled to our support, our admiration, because they are doing the job for our country overseas.
Do you support the Australian federal government's decision to illegally invade and occupy Iraq?
Well, when you say that question, that is a loaded question and a misleading question that inaccurately sets out the situation. It was, you've got to recognise that there were UN Security Council resolutions in relation to weapons of mass destruction, and the incursion into Iraq was in accordance with international law. It was not an illegal action, and it was done in the belief that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. So for you as an interviewer to say to me that it was an illegal invasion is to totally misrepresent the facts to your viewers.
Do you support the invasion of Iraq and the occupation?
Well, I mean, as I said, I support the action that was taken. It was taken for good cause. I've just explained the reason for that. There were UN Security Council resolutions. There was intelligence showing that there were weapons of mass destruction, and the action taken by Australia and the other countries were fully in accordance with international law.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Have a great day and good luck with your studies.
Thank you.